Happy Tuesday, Dan Rubenstein, my good friend out there in the heart of the Midwest, Chicago, Illinois. Dan Rubenstein, sir. Welcome back to the show, my friend. How are you?
I'm good, Ty. I'm good. I have spillover thoughts. I have verbaler answers. I have whatever you need from. I'm here for you, Ty. I'm here for the listeners. We've got a lot to get to.
We aim to serve here on the Solid Verbal. If you're new here to our little college football pirate ship, I am Ty. He is Dan. Hit follow, hit subscribe so that you don't miss any of our episodes. We do the recap episodes Saturday night at midnight. We do the preview episodes bright and early on Thursday morning. But wedged right in the middle is this here spillover episode. It's all the stuff from the past week that we've been ruminating over, thinking about, didn't have a chance to give voice to when we did the Saturday at midnight live stream in recap of the week 8 action. Yes, we are now approaching week 9. We can deal with that in our own time a little bit later on this week. But great to have you with us. We've got a new Verballer Top 12 poll that we're going to unveil here momentarily. We've got some news in the coaching world starting to trickle in. Took a little bit longer maybe than we thought, but starting to occur. We do have those leftover thoughts from week 8. And we're going to take a glimpse ahead at some of the big games this coming weekend, as well as look at the weekday games and play a little game of, I won't spoil the surprise.
Okay.
A Verballer suggestion from our ardent supporters out at verballers.com, Dan. Loaded
Great.
show.
Can't wait.
Why don't we start with our new Verballer Top 12 poll, though? We've kind of grown accustomed to starting here whenever we do these Tuesday spillover episodes. It is voted on by our paying subscribers out at verballers.com. If you're interested, that's one way you can support the show, get bonus episodes, ad-free content, the deal. At number 12, it's BYU.
Okay.
At number 11, it's Indiana. At number 10, it's Tennessee. Number 9 is Clemson. Number 8, LSU. Number 7, Iowa State. Moving up, just creeping on up.
Mm-hmm.
Number 6, Miami. Number 5, Texas. Yes, they dropped down to 5. Number 4, Penn State. Number 3, Ohio State. Number 2, Georgia. And number 1, your Oregon Ducks, Dan. Thoughts, reactions,
who else
inner
received
feelings.
Votes? Who else received votes? Do you have that in front of you as well? Like, do you have 13, 14, 15, 16? Am I putting you on the spot with
13 would be Notre Dame.
Okay.
And 14 would be A&M.
Okay.
15 is Alabama.
Uh-huh.
And 16 is the Army Black Knights.
Ooh, okay. So, as a Notre Dame human, do you feel like they should have received more top 12 consideration, or are you fine because they are ranked higher in the AP poll, right?
They are. And no, the answer is no. I think putting BYU and Indiana in front of them at this point is totally justifiable. I have been a Notre Dame skeptic for a while now. Really, ever since that NIU game,
you've been a Notre Dame skeptic since 1993, Ty.
Since 1993, I have struggled a little bit with where to put this team on that totem pole, and so it doesn't bother me to see them outside of our group's top 12. I think there are varying opinions on that, but by and large, it's the back half of the top 10 if they're in at all.
Okay.
Right now, I do think if push comes to shove, if they keep winning out, it looks probable that they will continue winning out. Notre Dame will find a way into a playoff. There's almost no doubt about that. But certainly Army on the schedule in a few weeks, Navy on the schedule this week, which we'll preview on the Thursday episode. They've got games against Florida State. They still got that game against USC as well to close out the year. So Notre Dame will have opportunities here, I think, to showcase what they can do on national television.
Yep.
But for the time being, this seems about right to me. Iowa State at 7 is the only team I really react to. And you know that I'm pretty high on Iowa State. I've been for a while. 7 feels high to me. 7 feels high to me based on what we saw. I'd be inclined to put LSU above Iowa State just based on recent results. And the poll, if we look at the points, seems to dictate, that there's a bit of a drop-off after Miami at 6. After Miami at 6, that's when there's a lot of sameness, let's say, for the next 5 or 6 spots. And I sense that that's where our voting public really struggled to place teams in order.
Okay. Interestingly, when I look at the back half of this top 25, I see a lot of danger. Like, I see a lot of potential for dramatic jump ups. Whereas you're right. I mean, I don't think I would consider myself an Iowa State skeptic, but the way that the defense performed, or rather didn't perform against UCF, just has my eye askance. I don't know if that's the right way to say it.
No, well, it just gave up so many big plays,
Big plays. And look, they won their clunker, right? That's what winning teams do. That's what good teams do. They have down weeks, but they still win in their down weeks. But when I look at the back half, I look at the ceiling of Ole Miss. I know, not a great loss to Kentucky, I grant you. The ceiling of Ole Miss, the ceiling of Boise State has now one of the best losses in America. They've exclusively lost to the number one team in America. America's Oregon Ducks, yes?
Mm-hmm. Your Oregon Ducks, yeah.
America's Oregon Ducks, Ty.
Sure, if you say so.
Yeah. Kansas State is looking stronger by the week, and we'll get into this a little bit more with spillover thoughts. My God, did their offense look clean. I don't know if the Kansas State equipment managers need to do laundry after how little West Virginia was able to get to them. And they appear to be, especially Avery Johnson, like he is, it's no surprise the quarterback is the identity right now. He is a grower. He is an absolute grower. May not have been a shower in September, but is growing into his role quite impressively. So I look at those two teams, Kansas State, Ole Miss.
Which, by the way, I should add, if you want, I mean, we didn't really read these off, but if we want to go through the full top 25 on the Verballer side,
please do.
Boise State at 17, followed by Pitt, Navy, Illinois, Kansas State, SMU, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, and Mizzou. That will be your full top 25.
SMU, another team that has vault potential.
I have some leftover thoughts on SMU.
I
do.
I imagine you do, because I have some leftover potential here, but there are leftover thoughts on their potential. SMU, just with the rest of their schedule, with how the defense is peaking right now. It was Stanford this past weekend, so I don't know how much spillover you have about SMU Stanford specifically, but there's a lot of danger in this back half. And I don't know, like with what Texas's schedule, I don't have Texas' schedule in front of me. I know they're at Vandy this week. Oregon's schedule has opened up a little bit. Like, I don't know. Miami, you're sure, is going to take a hit here or there. Indiana's now, and this is another spillover, without Curtis Rourke for an indeterminate amount of time.
Right.
It's a Taven Jackson, Indiana program right now. There's a lot of interesting wiggle room in this back half.
All right. Well, write in solidverbal@gmail.com, or we're going to have this posted out on our social media accounts. Chime in out there if you haven't had a chance to do so already on our verballers.com comment thread or Discord server, any of that stuff. We'd love to hear your thoughts on who's too high, who is too low. And again, if you go on out to verballers.com, you can sign up and vote in the poll next week. Every now and again, maybe next week I'll give out a few invites to vote. I've done that on occasion. That was a lot of fun.
How do you feel? Sorry, I just wanted one more thought on the top 12. How do you feel about Penn State at 4?
It's fine. It's fine.
Slow down with the enthusiasm.
Well, it's okay. Yeah. In our poll, Georgia is above Penn State, and I think that's right. Okay, that feels about right to me. I'm glad that they're getting the nod over. I'm not glad, but I think it's right that they would get the nod over.
You think their performance on the road
State
has earned them something? Yeah.
Yeah. We'll find out what Penn State's all about in 2 weeks when Ohio State comes to town. But for the time being, anyway, I think it's I don't know. I don't have a problem with this. I don't have a problem with Texas at 5. I think this kind of stacked up in a pretty good way.
I think Texas is better, but Penn State hasn't lost. And so
that stands for something, right?
It does. For something. Winning is better than losing, no matter who you're playing. Penn State has won. Below Texas is where I start to see, like, as much as Clemson has grown, I want to see it against somebody interesting. But I think Clemson being the top 10 is totally good. Tennessee, winning as a skill, they won. That was a nice win. I just think there's so much volatility potential here between 6 and 16.
Yeah,
it's
you're
great.
Not ready to let this go. I was ready to move on. You're ready. To keep talking about this, man.
I'm hyped, Ty. I'm into it.
You're not even a poll guy, and you're into this poll.
No, I'm into it because when I see it organized in front of me, and I look at AP polls and coaches polls and everything, but when I see top to bottom what the top 25 is looking right now, I don't know. I get a little tingly. It's great.
Let's get to some news, shall we?
Okay.
We do have some breaking news.
Boop, 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 boop.
Seth Luttrell out as offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. Brent Venables made that announcement. They are turning the reins over to Joe John Finley, along with Kevin Johns, who was formerly an analyst, formerly an offensive coordinator for Duke.
Mm-hmm.
But Kevin Johns was with Oklahoma in an analyst role. They're going to be kind of tag teaming this. It looks like Joe John Finley is going to be sort of the main guy. We've got Andy Ludwig resigning as offensive coordinator at Utah.
Yeah.
Kind of came out of nowhere. And we got Mike Houston, the first head coach fired this season, fired by ECU. ECU lost a week ago rather handily to Navy. And it turns out that was the final straw. ECU came into the season notably with one of the better defenses in conference, but offense is always going to be a bit of a struggle bus. And as such, they decide that they are going to cut the cord. ECU, the first on the board looking for a coach. And in reaction to these coaching maneuvers?
When you look at what Seth Luttrell, the hand he was dealt a little bit this year, and same with Andy Ludwig with quarterback injury, you say to yourself, one hand behind your back, what are you supposed to do with the receivers that are hurt for Oklahoma, with Jackson Arnold not working out? That said, as the offensive coordinator, you're supposed to help Jackson Arnold to work out.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know they had losses on the offensive line as well, and it's a tough schedule, and there's a number of check boxes there. But also, you gotta make chicken salad. And Oklahoma's ability to make chicken salad seemed to get worse every week. And so, obviously, we're not privy to exactly what's happening behind the scenes, and or heads butting, if the communication was broken down, whatever. But bigger picture, Brent Venables has now fired a defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator in the last 10 months?
Yeah.
Something like that. So
I feel like he had to do something, though. I mean, the offense has been an unmitigated disaster.
Mm-hmm.
You risk total mutiny.
Oh, I'm not saying it's the wrong move. I'm saying Brent Venables' ability to go after, diagnose, connect with potential coordinator candidates. If it's not if we're talking about both sides of the ball in 10 months, where is the confidence that Brent Venables is working out long term? I don't know if he just has a small network because he was at Clemson for so long, or was just unwilling to take a shot on somebody he didn't know or hadn't spent time with. Like, I don't know what the thinking was behind those two hires.
Yeah.
Those were very much people he was familiar with, instead of like, what is the best thing to do in college football in 2024 in the SEC? It wasn't Seth Luttrell. It wasn't Ted Roof. So
yeah. Well,
I'm calling into like the program vision right now of Brent Venables.
Well, and I was going to bring up the Ted Roof thing. I mean, it's become a popular punchline on this show.
Right.
I talk about the leaky roof often, but that was a guy that he sort of knew, right? And we have seen other recent instances of hiring the guy that not really working out. Marcus Freeman did that with Jared Parker, right? We see how well that's working out at Troy at present. So, they had to do something. This offense was not in a good place. It is not solely because of the quarterback, but the quarterback is going to be the most prominent reason why that people, I think, cite. And that will they, won't they start Jackson Arnold? Will they go to Michael Hawkins Jr.? We've kind of gone a few cycles through this now. And I suspect if you're an Oklahoma fan, there's reason for frustration. This was a move that needed to be done just so not forget about the locker room so you don't lose the fan base.
Right.
Fan base was extremely frustrated. What do you think of this Andy Ludwig resignation at Utah?
Utah, so I think I looked this up. Utah had like the 112th points per drive offense, has the 112th points per drive offense thus far this year, and Oklahoma's at about 111th. They're right there neck and neck. And I don't know if this was a conversation to save face. I don't know what the agreement was behind the scenes. I mean, always get fired instead of resigning just for money reasons, I guess.
For severance, right? You want that
Take
severance.
that money.
Yeah.
I don't know if some sort of agreement was in place that he would get his severance, but, has the dignity to be the one stepping down because he felt like he wasn't able to get the most out of his players and that he should take the responsibility. Maybe behind the scenes there was something.
Yeah.
But
I've got some thoughts on Utah, by the way, when we get to leftovers. I have,
by the way,
it's not exactly a secret theory, but I have a theory on this decision.
I have a theory myself, and I think Utah just lost their by far their best recruiting, their biggest commitment, Aaron Dunn, offensive lineman. They may have lost a couple of pretty decent-sized ones, and now Andy Ludwig decides to resign.
Yeah. Don't say it. Don't say it. Let's save it for the next segment, okay? We're both going to the same place with this.
Wait, I'm not allowed to finish a sentence?
No, you're not, because I know where you're going with it, and I don't want you to steal my thunder, okay?
Oh, Ty. I was going to make a
Everybody
point
listening.
before you could.
Everybody listening knows where we're going with this, okay?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, speaking of behind the scenes, I have a very small dog here that I'm trying to keep entertained while we are doing this episode. So far, so good. She's chewing on a box, but I'll keep you posted.
This is one of your bitches without the leaky anus.
Yes, correct.
Okay, just making
I don't know if that's suitable for air here, but yes, we're dealing with a condition.
They're both lady dogs?
They are lady dogs, yeah.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay. News-wise, Mike Houston ECU also lost to Charlotte a couple weeks ago.
Correct.
Which was probably like very close to the last straw. Let's see how you do against Navy. Yeah, the Taven Jackson news is a bummer, just in terms of news. I mean, not Taven Jackson, but that the injury, Indiana is without Curtis Rourke. I hope Taven Jackson succeeds. I phrased that completely and inappropriately. Taven Jackson came in and looked pretty good against Nebraska in the second half.
We were calling him Raven Taven last year.
Yeah,
for a moment, for like 2 weeks.
It was a stretch. Any other news to you right now that is newsworthy?
I want to get into my spillover thoughts.
Please.
I have some good ones from this past week. So we mentioned SMU, Dan. SMU hammered Stanford 40-10.
Mm-hmm.
The SP Plus, our trusted metric, is projecting them to win their next 5 games over Duke, Pitt, Boston College, UVA, and Cal.
Understandably so.
Something that I trained in on when I was going through and trying to build one of my spreadsheet specials was this switch at quarterback to Kevin Jennings. Kind of caught a lot of us by surprise because Preston Stone was pretty good last year. And in the early part of the season, obviously they had that 18-15 loss against BYU that raised some eyebrows. This was before we knew what BYU was going to become. That loss has aged pretty well, to be honest.
Yeah.
But notably on the Kevin Jennings front, right now PFF has him ranked as the 10th best passer in the Power 4. And there are 2 really interesting trends in his game that I noticed and that I want people to watch out for moving forward. So it's a little bit of a spillover thought from the weekend and from the Stanford game. But I think broadly speaking, it's a trend to watch as SMU rounds the bend and gets into some of these games here the rest of the way.
Mm-hmm.
His completion percentage when you blitz him is 79%.
Wow. Okay.
And interestingly, here's what's interesting. It is higher when you blitz him than when you don't. When you don't blitz him, his completion percentage is 60%. When you do, it's 79%. When you
Loves his hot routes. Yeah.
When you do get pressure on him, this is where I'm going. When you do get the pressure on him, the completion percentage comes way down like 50%. And so I think the long and short of it with SMU is who can get the pressure without blitzing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're looking at this in terms of the teams that remain on that schedule, if you know a little bit about defensive lines, you know a little bit about how some of these teams play, it's not that difficult a calculation to figure out who can and can't do that. This guy's a mobile quarterback. Most of his rushing yards come on scrambles, not designed runs. The game plan has to be getting the pressure without blitzing, keeping him in the pocket, keeping him in a spot where you're not bringing his legs into the equation. So I don't know if you're playing contains with your ends or what you're doing, but something to kind of keep him bottled up, prevent him from breaking outside the pocket, and then all of a sudden you got your receivers doing scramble drills. I think that's where SMU right now is finding a lot of success. And, Duke, Pitt, Boston College, UVA, and Cal. Maybe Cal, maybe Pitt, maybe Duke. Like, we could debate the merits of who can and can't do that, but I think that's probably the game plan, at least defensively, when you're playing against a team like an SMU.
I enjoy that. How many weeks into the season are we? We're pre-week 9.
Yeah.
Your hot tip for the rest of SMU's schedule is have a killer defensive line who can get pressure without help. That's the big time tie strategy.
Well, it's not a big time strategy.
No, it's like here's my strategy. Have a Heisman caliber quarterback and 2 Biletnikoff receivers. Yeah, of course.
So case in point.
Yes, get pressure without blitzing. Yes, of course.
Here's a case in point. Why I bring this up. it wasn't all that long ago on one of these Tuesday shows, I talked about the value of Louisville. This is early season.
Oh, yeah.
Early season Louisville being able to get pressure without blitzing. And I talked specifically about the game against Miami and how if they could do that against a guy like a Cam Ward, that would give them more success. Now, they didn't really have that success, especially in the first half. They didn't do anything to get any pressure on him in the first half. They didn't even try to blitz. And as such, Cam Ward sort of went wild. Second half, they started dialing up pressure. That's when the game got kind of wild. So this is, of course, not any foreign schematic advantage or anything. But I'm just saying, this is what the numbers are showing.
And you can do
Kevin Jennings.
You can do more interesting things with 4 than just send them straight at a quarterback. Like you can do your stunts and twists and drop into zone blitzes and stuff, and simulated pressure. There's all sorts of things you can do, but yeah, easier said than done. Because look, the connection between Kevin Jennings and I think it's R.J. Maryland, tight end, has been thriving for. I mean, Brashard Smith on the ground, like they're able to adapt pretty quickly. The receivers seem sharp. Obviously, Rhett Lashley is a sharp offensive mind. And by the way, just in terms of top assistants this year, and Broyles Award, whatever. Is it Simmons or Simons? Defensive Simmons for SMU, and he's been a Rhett Lashley guy for some time. He was at Liberty before, but that defense has done a remarkable job this year.
It has. All right. My next item.
Yeah.
We didn't talk enough about Virginia Tech this past week because they played earlier in the week. They beat Boston College soundly 42-21.
Mention them as a lurker on our Saturday night show.
We did mention them as a lurker. Everyone, present company included, was high on this team at the start of the season. And then it cooled. Why did it cool? Because they lost to Vandy.
Yeah.
Losing to Vandy, historically kind of a black eye. Not as much the case this year.
AP top 25 program, Vanderbilt anchor down. Yeah.
That's exactly right. They have also since lost to Rutgers and Miami. The Miami game, we know about the Miami game. They could have won that one. All 3 losses have been by 1 score. Again, there are some in there that maybe could have gone a different way. First off, that Vandy loss in hindsight is not bad at all.
Right.
Even the Rutgers loss was not terrible. But
to
your point,
crazy well, but yeah.
To your point, I know you're starting to buy in on Virginia Tech, and I needed to go and look at the numbers to see if I was there too.
Okay.
There has been a trend emerging over the last 3 games. In each of their last 3 games, they have outperformed their projections by about 15 points. That includes the Miami game back in week 5. That includes every game since. What we have yet to see is both the offense and the defense both overperforming in the same game. But it seems like when you've got a team that very clearly is building some momentum, Dan, the writing is on the wall.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to peak in early September, I guess.
I think the writing is on the wall. I think it's going to start happening soon. I'm back. I am back in on the Tech train. Is there room on the Tech train for me?
Yeah. I mean, look, there's room on the Brent Pry Massive Hog caboose, whatever.
The back.
That's what it's called. God, that's such a specific reference that we at one point did a show in which we reacted to Message Board Geniuses, and somebody said you can just tell Brent Pry has a massive hog with the way he carries himself. Right. And we had to react to that. There are these teams in every conference, and we can go through them when we went through a little bit with the lurkers or the growers or whatever, that Virginia Tech, you're right. If they can put it all together, I think it was the second quarter against Miami, if they can be a little bit less streaky and just a little bit more decent all the time, I don't know who's on the back half of their schedule, but I suspect it's workable given your enthusiasm.
Consistency is key.
Yeah.
Consistency is key. All right. Let's talk about that Utah theory now.
Okay.
So Utah lost 13-7. It was the late night game on Saturday that we didn't get a chance to discuss. First off, it was a big win for TCU. It gets them to 4-3. It looks like they should be slightly favored in like 4 of their next 5, maybe have a shot at 8-4, 9-3. That seemed impossible to me personally when we did our preseason stuff because I was just in on the under 7.5 for this team. I was convinced, but right now I'm not going to act like this is some sort of juggernaut, but 4-3, the schedule in front of them is workable. After going 3-3 the first 6 weeks of the season, right now, TCU, if you're a TCU fan, I think you got to like the direction that they're headed.
Really?
And this is a big win. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I mean, there are still real questions. Don't get me wrong, but, beating Utah, that was not really one that we had planned for before the season. So I think you feel like you got one here that you can use and, propel you into a bowl.
If you think the story there is TCU's defense has finally woken up and they perform super well against a good Utah offense, sure. I think the story here is Utah's collapse.
Utah's collapse. So this profiled as a game that Utah should have run wild in, literally run wild.
Yes.
And instead they finished with 68 yards on the ground. Utah is now 4-3. There's a good chance they're a dog in 4 of their next 5. At this point, there is zero shot of them hitting their over 9.5, which I think we were both in on.
Yeah.
I think they'll make a bowl, Dan. That's not a given, though.
No.
And I think this is building to Kyle Whittingham's last year.
I think so, too.
Because he named Morgan Scalley as the head coach in waiting. That was something of a story before the season kicked off. It just feels like the momentum is there for a coaching change, that after all of these preseason expectations, the letdown of Cam Rising getting hurt again, it feels like Utah may be ready to turn the page of sorts. Kyle Whittingham's been a great coach at Utah, don't get me wrong. It just seems like now would be the time to kind of get a fresh start with somebody else in charge, even though he's been there forever. Am I wrong with that? Is that where you were going with it too?
That's exactly where I was going with it. That it just seems that, like, I don't know if it's Morgan Scalley. I'm fully speculating irresponsibly. But with how recruiting has gone recently, with the on-field stuff, with Andy Ludwig, stepping down, it just has the air of like, yeah, Morgan Scalley is going to be taking on more responsibilities now. And this particular segment might be out of date by the time this show is even released. The vibes are pointing in that specific direction. So yeah, that's the vibe I get from how things are going behind the scenes at Utah right now.
My only other spillover thought, and then I'll kick it over to you, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
I want to circle back to LSU for a second.
Oh, yeah. Rewatched that this morning.
Yeah, we kind of panned LSU's overtime win against Ole Miss 2 weeks ago, I think because so much else happened that week. And got an email about that. Wanted to make sure that I gave LSU its due. And this is a spot in which we saw LSU's on the road at Arkansas in a game that's historically kind of weird.
Yes.
And it's a week before they're squaring off against Texas A&M in Kyle Field.
Yes.
It's kind of getting to the point where you shouldn't just pan this LSU defense.
When you say pan, what do you mean?
Hand wave it.
Oh, okay.
We know what happened
Cast
last
it
year.
aside. Yeah.
We know what happened last year. They stunk. They were historically bad.
Yes.
And there have been moments this season, for sure, where we've seen that version of it. But I have seen real strides. For one, the tackling is way better. Way better. Tackle success rate, a measure of this.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, hovering around 50th in the nation. Right now, it's 4th best in the nation.
Great. And that's without Harold Perkins, too.
Without Harry Perky.
Yeah.
They're creating those havoc plays again. Last year finished in the 60 to 70 range nationally. So we're talking tackles for loss, pass breakups, interceptions, fumble recovery, things like that. So far, 10th this season.
Great.
Again, doing it without Harold Perkins. So whatever they are doing, whatever they paid Blake Baker to come in there.
A lot of money. Yeah.
Paid him a lot of potatoes to come over and try to fix this thing. It may have taken a little bit initially, but LSU defensively is looking much, much better. And this is another team that we had in that lurker category last episode. Tough one this weekend at A&M, but let's look at their November. There's a good chance going 4-0 against Bama. You could beat Bama.
Mm-hmm.
Florida, Vanderbilt, and Oklahoma. Those are 4 games in November. With the trajectory of LSU right now, and you look at where those other teams are at, I'm not saying it's easy. Nothing in the SEC is, but in light of losing 2 coordinators and Jaden Daniels and dealing with the whole defense thing, If they go 11-1, even if they go 10-2, that's a coup.
Yeah.
That is a coup in my book if they're able to put in this kind of season, given some of the questions they had coming into it.
Okay, couple thoughts. One, LSU lost week 1 to USC in a crazy tight game week 1. As I've said all season long, I'm always willing to extend grace for week 1 results. That was a wild game. LSU was not fully formed. They've gotten better over the course of the season. 2, Garrett Nussmeier, I would imagine there is a certain quality of LSU fans that, as much as they've enjoyed this season thus far, that dude throws off his back foot a ton. That dude feels pressure and says, all right, screw it. Let's see what's going to happen here.
Let's see. Let's just throw it up. And you know what? When you've got receivers that are good, a lot of times you can get away with it.
I agree.
Right? It works better when you've got Kyron Lacey than it does if you've got, most of the other receivers in college football. But I take your point, and it's not invalid.
He's not always a feel the pressure on the edge, step into the pocket, and throw it over the middle and be decisive about his footwork and his progressions. That's okay. That's okay. He'll get there, hopefully. But just in terms of what he does when he feels things breaking down, there are some risky decisions that he is still prone to making. And that's okay. And the emergence of Caden Durham hopefully will help keep sort of defenses on their heels kind of thing, because I thought he was very good against Arkansas. I don't know if he went for 100 yards, but burned out some tough yards. The other thing was, I still worry a little bit about LSU, because you're right about the defense. The defense has improved. They're getting a ton of pressure. Braden Swinson, I'm not crazy about their linebackers right now, but if you're generating pressure, it's a way to cover up for some defensive deficiencies. There is something about the drive finishing in this moment. And I don't know if it's a play calling thing. I don't know if it's an execution thing. They had, if memory serves, 2 touchdown drives against Arkansas. They kicked a bunch of field goals. They had the 3-yard short field touchdown after an incredible interception. I'm not saying only having 2 touchdown drives is bad if you can generate points elsewhere. It's a plus on LSU overall. It's a question on LSU's offense in this moment. That if we're going to start saying, here's who they have left, this is their record right now, we'll see what happens, it's pretty workable. There is something about LSU now. If the big things seem to be operating, let's look at the little things. And the casual nature of Garrett Nussmeier under pressure and their ability to finish drives right now. Look, they did it at Arkansas. They won comfortably. They checked every box for me as a quality team. I'm just saying, if you're going to nitpick, that's where I might look. The little things not finishing out drives and emphatically sending messages. But they'll get there. It's a new team.
It's a new team. What else do you got from week 8?
Okay, so I watched the Colorado-Arizona game in its entirety. I watched a lot of Big 12 that I didn't fully watch on Saturday. Colorado's defense is pretty interesting to me. Sam Okunlola, BJ Green, they're getting after the quarterback in impressive ways. And they're still dealing with a beat-up Travis Hunter, who only played part of the game against Arizona. I don't know. I like their corners more than I thought I would against Arizona, because that's a measuring stick game in terms of a passing attack. How can they handle Noah Fafita and T-Mac and some of the guys there? I thought they handled themselves really nicely on defense. The defense looks ahead of the offense to me. And I like that they leaned on the run a little bit when they had that lead. Dallin Hayden had a couple nice runs. I'm still not a huge fan of this offensive line, but in terms of Shedeur as a playmaker, one of his he had 2 picks. One of them was late in the game. It was a tipped ball. It was a bad low throw from him, but it wasn't a consequential interception. I think Colorado's pretty good. And
you've come around, man. You've come around on them.
I've come around, but I'm not going to say I was super low on Colorado and I'm going to stick with that feeling as I watch their games all season long. I wasn't low, it wasn't high. It was just sort of neutral and not super bought in on them dramatically improving. But this Big 12, and again, this is not a knock on Colorado's performance this year. There's a lot of dreck. There's a lot of garbage in this Big 12 this year. Maybe not as a full team, but a garbage offense, a garbage defense, a garbage quarterback. And Colorado is doing what a pretty good team should do, which is take advantage. Arizona's a mess, by the way.
Yeah,
Arizona's a mess. They're beat up on defense. Offensively, Noah Fafita is constantly running and trying too hard to make plays that are ending in poor decisions. I mean, you brought up the buyout stuff. I'm not willing to pour dirt on the Brent Brennan era. I didn't like his hires before in Dwayne Aquina and Dino Babers as coordinators, and they've already made a change in terms of play calling on offense, at least a couple times. He better be recruiting. I have not looked on Arizona's recruiting, but this was the year for Arizona. There were opportunities on this schedule, and Arizona is a mess. They are thin pretty much everywhere in terms of quality depth, and it is you mentioned to me, like, who are you ready to just give up on? Arizona's making it pretty easy right now.
One final point on the Colorado stuff, then I want to get the remainder of your thoughts here. We still have our Verballer segment and some other stuff here to get through. Colorado improved both offensively and defensively, and dramatically so. Not as dramatically on offense, because they had a pretty good offense, all things considered, last year. It was mostly built around the pass and Shador. But in terms of the SP+, which is not gospel, but something that I like to use, 48th last year at the end of the year, offensively now up to 29th, so a top 30 offense is pretty good.
Yes.
And defensively, this is where we've really seen the strides. The final year of Carl Durrell, they were 128th nationally. Last year, they only moved up 15 spots to 113th. This year, all the way up to 56th.
Yeah.
This will change. We're only about halfway or so-ish through the season. But given what we've seen, it seems like there's real steam on that defensive side of the ball, and more people are taking notice that, yes, this is, in fact, a much improved defense. It's not going to shut you down. You're going to score points on Colorado, but to the extent that the Big 12 is still sort of in a blender and still sort of has a lot of weakness across the board.
Yeah.
I don't know. Colorado's remaining schedule for those playing the home games: Cincinnati, Texas Tech, a very flawed Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State yet to win a Big 12 game, yes?
Oklahoma State yet to win a Big 12 game. The projected margin right now in all 5 of those games is 5 points or fewer. In fact, most of them are less than a field goal. So it's just there. It's there for Colorado. They're projecting to be in some close games here, but by this measure, winning 4 out of 5, if you're Colorado, you win 4 out of your next 5.
Right.
You finish the season with 9 wins. That's a pretty good season. That's a pretty good campaign for Dion.
These are decidedly half teams, by the way, that they're playing.
Oh, yeah.
There's a ton of opportunity in terms of Cincinnati, I think, is quality, and they've been pretty consistent. They haven't played a ton of good teams. Texas Tech's defense is willing to fall apart at any moment. They are on call to fall apart, the Texas Tech defense. You mentioned Utah's offense falling apart. Kansas, a nice one against Houston, but you're talking about 2 basement dwellers right now in the Big 12 going at it. We'll see if Jalen Daniels has turned a corner. That becomes more interesting if true, because he did have a really nice game. And Oklahoma State's a mess on defense this year.
Yeah.
And so, no, there's a lot of opportunity there for Colorado. I have Tulane down once again. The loss to Oklahoma isn't great. They should have beaten Kansas State, which I don't know if you can say like a should have beaten Kansas State moment has aged nicely, I guess. But for Tulane, who has North Texas on the road, which will be challenging to hold down that offense, they finish at Navy and then a bye week before Memphis. Tulane is either deciding the American, for somebody else or for themselves at the end of this season. They're real interesting. They look pretty complete. They're well coached, and they look beautiful in those uniforms. I love those uniforms. So Tulane's, they're lurking. They're quality. I'm paying. It's going to be tough to get that G5 spot with 2 losses, but I mean, it's Kansas State and Oklahoma. They're a quality team. I like Tulane a lot.
I'm going to talk about that Boise UNLV game a little bit later on, because that has real significance with respect to that G5 playoff spot. And that game's on late Friday night. You know, if you're young enough, stay up to watch the whole thing. Late kick, but definitely has, I think, some real significance with respect to not just that G5 playoff spot, but also Tulane's role in that conversation.
Yes.
What else do you got?
The Boise thing is interesting. We're going to get there. They've just taken care of business in a way that I love to see. And they had a bye week this past week before UNLV.
Correct.
But I went back and watched a little more Boise. I don't love their passing game, But if they continue to play defense and run the ball, I don't know, man. They're really
continue
good.
to play defense for the first time.
Yes.
That's the problem I have with them.
Well, the defensive numbers aren't great because of that first game against Georgia Southern and the game against Oregon. But I don't think that fully characterizes their season. I'm willing to extend grace on Boise. When I was looking at some updated numbers, there are a couple of outliers within like the top 15 or 20. Do you know who has by far the worst defense in that like top 15, 20 range?
I'm
putting you on the spot.
About like Verballer top 12 poll.
Anybody? I'm looking at the like net points per drive. I'm looking at the analytics here, but like these are all relatively the same teams we're talking about.
Texas,
Miami has by far the worst defense. They are around, I think, 69th or 70th in points per drive allowed. And you look at the Virginia Tech game, you look at the Cal game, now you look at the Louisville game, and that would be a concern point to me right now. Kansas State's defense needs to improve, but I think they've gotten better. My other point about Kansas State, by the way, is in rewatching or really watching in full for the first time that West Virginia game, it looked like practice. Kansas State looked like they just came off of the practice field, and Chris Kleiman's talking to beat reporters and say, I thought we were really crisp out there. I thought it was a really nice Wednesday practice. We're really like firing on all cylinders. I'm excited for the weekend and for the season that we have to come. West Virginia did not offer much. And
that surprised me. It surprised me. You know, it's not surprising that K-State would win. They were favored.
Yeah, and Garrett Green went down, didn't come play in the in the second half, excuse me.
I mean, it's not surprising that K-State would win that game. I do think on the whole they're a better team. I am surprised by how easy it felt. I'm surprised by that, truly. Because K-State, especially on the road, especially with Avery Johnson, who I think generally we like Avery Johnson a lot, but he's had his moments of inconsistency this year. To go on the road at night in Morgantown and to basically just throttle West Virginia in the manner that they did, it should open some eyes, right? And it wasn't just that. I mean, they held West Virginia down. It was a domination of both sides of the ball.
I don't know if you've ever played a 6-year-old in one-on-one basketball, Ty.
It's the best. It's the only time I feel good about my basketball game. You're
palming the ball over their head and you're hitting fadeaways. You're doing Avery Johnson. It was as if in an offensive meeting leading up to the game, a QB coach, a coordinator, somebody, you know when you look at the bottom of a website and there's those weird paid ads like doctors say this one trick can melt belly flat.
Yeah.
It was as if a coordinator said, Avery, I've got this one trick that's going to make life so much easier for you. He looked so calm in the pocket. He didn't take off prematurely in the way that he had early on in the season. He looked out at that West Virginia defense and had his own offensive line smothering the West Virginia front, but was going through progressions that, again, it's West Virginia. I don't know what this means for the rest of their schedule. I don't know what this means if they end up in a Big 12 championship game against Iowa State or something. Well, they'll play Iowa State in Farmageddon, but I don't know. It looked like a man reborn.
Okay. What else do we got? Any other trailing thoughts here before we get into our Verballer segment?
I don't think so. I think we're good.
All right. So we kind of have this thing on our show. It started years ago. It actually ended up on College Game Day.
That's true.
It was in the midst of an Iowa season where they weren't playing offense. Nothing new there. But in the middle of that season, we started a little line that we said, well, we got to talk to our kids about Iowa. We thought Iowa was going to go undefeated.
Yeah.
Caught on. The college football world took notice. As per usual, we ended up being trendsetters.
Your favorite podcast? Yeah.
That's right. We have the talking to your kids about ... question, comment, line that comes in via email every year. And now it has come into us from Kyle out at verballers.com. He says, which college football things need to be taken seriously and explained to our children who may or may not comprehend the gravity? Dan, my question is, which teams are we talking to our kids about?
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. And I want to have them answered immediately.
Who needs to be taken more seriously? Who do we need to talk to our children about, Dan?
I mean, it sort of dovetails with what we were just talking about. Like, I think Tulane needs to be taken more seriously. I think SMU needs to be taken. I mean, they haven't lost in the ACC, but still, they're sort of an afterthought in this moment because it's a Clemson-Miami race. I mean, in sort of mainstream thought, I would say. Who needs to be taken more seriously? Colorado, once again. ASU with a healthy Sam Leavitt is a team that I would take seriously.
Can I be honest with you about
Please.
something here?
Yeah.
I haven't watched a whole lot of ASU this year.
Okay.
We've been kind of wrapped up in whatever we do, and sometimes it's easy to miss teams that fall through the cracks. But
yeah,
I watched that last game that Sam Leavitt played. He didn't play the last game because he was hurt. Didn't play against Cincinnati. But the one before that, I forget against which team, I was really impressed. I was really genuinely impressed by how good he looked. He seemed to have command. He was accurate. He was tough to get in his face and pressure. I mean, Kenny Dillingham, his pedigree is as an offensive mind, is as a child of Tempe, Arizona. So clearly with everyone out in the field a couple weeks ago, you could see Kenny D was feeling it.
Yes.
But it felt to me like with Sam Leavitt in there, they have a chance of beating you. And there was a little bit of spark there. There was spark last year. They didn't have the personnel, but there was definitely spark this year, I think, with a little bit better quarterback play.
I don't know how I feel about Wisconsin in terms of tell your kids about. I'm trying to find that Big Ten team that is being overlooked in this moment. Wisconsin has both Penn State and Oregon in Madison.
Yes.
I don't know if Wisconsin is actually good or is decent situationally.
Okay.
So what am I telling my kids about Wisconsin? Don't count them out, I guess. That's as like dramatic as I can be about Wisconsin in this moment. Otherwise, who we should be taking seriously?
Vanderbilt.
I'm taking Vanderbilt seriously. You know I am already.
I know. I'm trying to avoid the obvious ones like Indiana and BYU and Iowa State. Like they're all ranked. They're borderline top 10 teams if they're already not in it. But, Vandy just cracked the top 25.
Mm-hmm.
5-2. They need one win to get bowl eligible against what right now projects as the 6th toughest schedule in America.
Yeah.
They do project as underdogs in their next 5 games, but I do not see them going 0-5, Dan. I don't think the improvements of Fluke, 8th most improved offense in terms of points per drive in the Power 4, 25th most improved defense by that same metric in the Power 4. This is a team that has definitely seen something of a transformation in the offseason. It's not all just Diego Pavia. They are better across the board. They are obviously taking teams to the gun. They knocked off Alabama.
Yes.
So I'm just feeling like Vandy's a tough out. I don't know what their final record's going to be. They could be one of these teams that gets into a bowl game with a 6-6 mark, and you got to pick them because you know that the schedule made them 6-6. It wasn't just a team that was floundering.
Right.
Vandy, need to take Vandy seriously. The other one I have here, per your Danalytics, by the way,
of course,
is Army.
Yes.
You can speak a little bit more to the context of your net points per drive improvement stat that you keep track of and how you calculate that and what that means. I don't want people's eyes and ears to glaze over talking about this, okay? I am guilty of that more than a few times.
Fair enough.
Army is like 4.5 points better per drive than they were a year ago. And that's including both offense and defense.
Right. So the offensive points scored per drive minus the defense points allowed per drive. Yeah.
You've been doing this a while now, the points per drive thing. That's kind of been your stat.
Yeah.
Mine is air yards, but yours is always points per drive. Relative to others, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, 4.54, I believe, is the number in improvement. Mm-hmm. That feels astronomically larger than most of the other ones I have seen.
It's pretty crazy. Now, here's the added context, Ty. They've played the worst schedule in America.
Well,
their strength of schedule is sitting at 133rd right now. They're yet to play a team with either an offense or a defense.
Yeah.
The last team they played, Army, just fired their coach. They're playing one of the most disappointing teams in search of the Commander-in-Chief trophy in Air Force after a bye. They have a North Texas team that doesn't play defense. They've got a very good, maybe, Notre Dame team, a UTSA team that fell off, and a resurgent Navy. So I have no idea how seriously or not seriously to take Army. But if they're a good team, they've performed like a good team should have against this schedule thus far. So I'm fully selling on, not selling on Nate or selling on Army. I'm fully selling on having an opinion about Army other than winning is so much better.
Okay. That's fair. By the way, I said
literally
earlier
the worst schedule in America.
I said earlier that Navy played ECU. I meant Army.
Army, yes.
My apologies. 45
That's super insulting.
to 28. Yeah. Army was the one that drove out Mike Houston.
More interestingly, who are you not taking seriously? Who are you telling your kids like you can go to sleep? They're not winning the game.
I'm still not really taking Illinois seriously. I know they're a top.
I'm not taking them seriously either.
Top whatever team, top 20 caliber team. They're one to me that I'm not fully in on. I still struggle with the BYU thing.
I know.
I really do. And I'm running out of reasons why, because they have been a grower. Jake Retzlaff has been pretty good. He has gotten better both as a passer and a runner. This team just feels like they're unkillable. And those are the teams generally that I gravitate towards. So personally, if I can just kind of have a moment of self-reflection, I think it's one of those deals where I kind of hated them in the preseason, and it has taken me a long time now. We're 8 weeks into this deal.
Yeah.
It has taken me a long time to start having this conversation with myself about, you were wrong, dog. You were really wrong about this team.
I think you're right and wrong. Like, I just think you should view the BYU thing through the lens of, let's not think about what they can be. Let's appreciate what they are and what they have been.
That's fair. And I probably need to come around to that.
But I understand when you're undefeated in a power conference, you start thinking about a team as a potential conference champion at this point. And maybe you're not taking them seriously in that regard, but I think you can accept their success for what it is.
I'm not taking Mizzou seriously.
Neither am I.
I don't think this is any kind of surprising revelation at this point. The win that they had against Auburn was gutsy.
Yeah.
That was a gutsy win to come from behind and win in the manner that they did. Brady Cook kind of literally coming back from the hospital after having an MRI to go out there and win the game. That all that stuff is good.
Yes.
The reason I am not buying is because the big plays just are not there. They are not there. They have not been able to create big plays. And like I said a few weeks ago, somebody's going to need to do a full 60 minutes report. I'm going to need the Athletic in on this. Give me 10,000 words in the offseason about how you have Luther Burden on the team and you can't generate big plays.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to need those. They are predictive of success, and they have not had any of those. So for as long as Mizzou remains this team on offense, not being able to generate any of that explosion, I can't take them seriously against an SEC schedule. What am I betting on here? I'm betting on fluke wins, essentially, like we saw this past week against Auburn.
For all of these teams, I take seriously what they've done so far, but I don't take seriously what it means for the back, 4 or 5 games. Pitt, Duke, and Syracuse in the ACC.
Okay.
I'm not there. They've played a lot of down teams that they've snuck by. In retrospect, I respect the wins. I appreciate the wins. The wins don't sway me in any sort of meaningful way. But I like that they're winning. I think that's a good thing. I am not a believer right now in Texas Tech with their record.
No. I
rewatched the butt game, Ty. Woo!
I want to be a believer.
Yeah.
I'm not there.
I'm not there with Texas Tech. I'm not there with Illinois. I am definitely not there after this weekend with Iowa and the way that I'm not there with Michigan State in the opposite direction yet, but I liked seeing it. I liked seeing something new and unexpected from Michigan State.
Yeah.
A novel performance is always welcome to my end. In the SEC, you mentioned Mizzou. I don't know that I'm fully in on Texas A&M right now.
That's interesting because I felt like you were a week ago.
I was. Another week where they are, one of 2 teams that are undefeated in the conference. I think they're good. But now we're talking about winning the SEC. I don't think Connor Wegman is an SEC winning quarterback. So, I don't know. I appreciate what they've done. I think it's a really nice story in year 1 of Mike Elko. Needless to say, I'm not in on Bama right now.
Yeah.
Are you a believer in Bama long term this season?
No.
It's a real tough watch. Again, I'm extending grace to Kalen DeBoer in year 1. It's an impossible job. It's an impossible ask.
It's all on Jalen Milroe.
Yes.
It's all on Jalen Milroe.
I'm telling my children to watch South Carolina games.
South Carolina is just a fun TV show.
It's like watching Looney Tunes. It's great.
It's just a good TV show.
Yeah.
And you never know what kind of madness you're going to see. Yeah, I agree with that. But I can't get there on Bama. I just can't. Not after what we've seen this season. It's 1-2 weeks feeling like the offense isn't getting into gear. That's one thing. But
yeah,
this has been a trend, man. I mean, it's been like 4 or 5 weeks now where we're saying the same thing. It's just at some point you are who you're telling us you are, right?
I am. This is big picture. If you're talking about telling your children something, I'm telling my children not to fall in love with any freshmen for your team. Right? College football in 2024. This is bigger. Like, I just bought my kid a Shohei Ohtani shirt, and I feel pretty great about that in terms of long-lasting stick-aroundedness. But
stick-to-itiveness.
Yeah. If you have a dream freshman, I don't care who you are, don't fall in love. Tell your kid that maybe there's another freshman on the way next year.
Yeah.
I don't know. What about you? Anybody else that you're not believing in? What do you advise people tell their kids about?
You stole my Syracuse pick. I was going to go there next.
Okay.
Because we're going to talk about some of the weekday
I'm
games.
into it. I'm into their success. I celebrate their success. But I don't look at somebody else's schedule, and when I see Syracuse and Pitt, think to myself, ooh, that's going to get real difficult.
Well, Syracuse and Pitt play. Let's get to that. By the way, if you've got any more that you want to add to our list,
please.
You know how to reach out. Social media, solidverbal@gmail.com. We do have a few early bird specials this week.
Early bird special.
Thursday at 7:30 on ESPN. It's Syracuse at 5-1. It's Pitt at 6-0. Pitt favored by 5.5 points. This is a perfect segue into the Pitt-Syracuse conversation.
Yeah.
You set me up perfectly. I looked at Syracuse. For what it's worth, every defense that Syracuse plays the rest of the season is better than every defense they've played thus far.
Yes.
And yes, that also includes their game on November 23rd against the UConn Fighting Huskies.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're right. I want to root for the Franimal. I still believe in the Syracuse project. I like watching the team, but their pass defense is really bad.
Yeah.
Really suspect, and I think that's what holds them back. It would not surprise me if this game against Pitt ends up being a quasi shootout, because I have questions about Pitt as well. I think both teams can score. I think it's a fun. Actually, I think there are a handful of fun games.
I think it's a great game. Yeah.
Thursday and Friday. I'm going Pitt 38-30. I like Pitt in this spot. They're at home.
I think so too. I said 37-34 actually in my mind. So I don't know what the spread will be at kickoff, but
so you would go Syracuse.
I would go points in a shootout type.
I don't blame you.
Yeah,
I understand that. The big one here with real consequence, I think, is on Friday at 10:30, CBS Sports Network. Boise at 5-1, favored by 3 on the road in Vegas against UNLV, coming into this game at 6-1. So both teams have that loss, but both were to non-conference opponents. Boise to your Oregon Ducks, UNLV to the aforementioned Syracuse Orange. This is a monster matchup, Dan.
Yes.
This is a big matchup in the Mountain West. Also, we're probably going to see a rematch of this game, so get ready for that.
Mm-hmm.
These are the top 2 teams in the Mountain West at present. Both of them are 2 clear in the loss column of the next best teams per the standings. I don't know if either team is taking a loss after this game.
Right.
And so that's why I
UNLV's
say
schedule
rematch.
is amazing after this game. Yeah.
Amazing. That's why I say it looks to me like this is a rematch, the first of 2.
Yeah.
I expect a lot of points. So is Vegas. 65.5 is your over under here. I'm going UNLV home dog of the week. Played the wrong sound.
There it is.
The Yakos home dog of the week.
Let's not get crazy and lock this up. All right.
Okay.
Hit the wrong button there. But I think lost in the Ashton Ginty craze is the fact that the Boise defense is very suspect. And so
yeah, it's been better.
It's been better. You're right to bring that up.
Yeah.
It's still kind of bad.
Yeah.
I think UNLV is good for 37, 38, 45 points on Boise.
Mm-hmm.
I could see this being one of those deals where there's like a late touchdown. Someone's got to go for 2 or they want to go for 2 and get the win. UNLV outright 42-41.
Yeah, I have this high scoring. I like UNLV as well, and they have your pet stat. I think they're yards before contact. You got to look at a team's rush defense right before they play Ashton Genty, and it's nice. I think it's top 15 or so.
It's not bad.
UNLV's.
It's not bad.
I like Barry Odom's ability. We did see winning as a skill. They went to Oregon State last week in Corvallis and won that game. 7 or 8 points. They won that game. I'm going UNLV here. I'm going UNLV at home. Stadium's going to be rocking, and I like the versatility of their offense a little bit more than I like Boise's as well. So
I might have
UNLV.
to stay up for this.
Oh
10:30 kick.
I can't wait.
10:30
Yeah, you're going to
kick.
stay up. You'll make it a Vegas has set the line. This is a UNLV game.
Yeah.
If Ty makes it to the midway point of the second quarter, it will be the upset of the weekend.
Well, 65.5 is the over-under. 65.5 minutes is probably a good over-under for how long I make it.
I
in this
like
game.
that. 10:30 kick, so making it to 11:35.
And then the other game on Friday at 11 on Fox, it's Rutgers traveling to USC. USC favored by 14 points.
Yeah.
This is a big-time vibe check game right here.
Sure.
You know, USC and Rutgers both coming in with 3 straight losses. On the Rutgers side, 2 of them were blowouts, and one of them was against UCLA, which is almost worse.
Yeah.
I kind of think they get annihilated by USC here.
That's my instinct. That's my gut.
I kind of think they get annihilated because USC may not have a great defense,
Right.
but it is better. And I am not of the mind here that Rutgers is going to come in and consistently put together long clock-killing drives.
Sure.
I think that's their only shot to keep this one close. They're not going to win a shootout if they get into one with USC. They just don't have the offense. 37-17 USC. I think they win handily in this game.
I saw somebody, I don't know, it was a tweet out or on some Instagram somewhere said, you can take your Dodgers Yankees. The clear tri-state area Southern California matchup of the weekend. Rutgers traveling to whatever 3 and 4 USC. It's if USC loses this game at home, USC fans should just pay attention to the Lakers, pay attention to the Dodgers. They're in the World Series. And just abandon the season. You should not pay attention to USC if they lose this game at home to Rutgers. It's a waste of your time. You deserve better.
This would be a horrible loss, and you know what? Rutgers isn't necessarily a horrible team. But this is a game they should win.
Yes.
Okay. I got a dog barking here. I apologize. Okay.
No, it's okay.
We have some other big ones this week. Once
we have?
get to the weekend, we got the Notre Dame Navy game, a line that's come down already, by the way. We've got Washington versus Indiana. We will talk more about the Curtis Rourke injury.
By the way,
when we do
vibe
the
check.
Thursday
What's your
preview.
vibe check now? You mentioned vibe check USC Rutgers, vibe check Navy Notre Dame.
I think Notre Dame's going to cream them.
Okay. That's
I
a
think
good vibe
Notre
then
Dame
for you.
Notre Dame should cream Navy.
Okay.
They should. Not to say they will. That line, when I made this document, was 13 in favor of Notre Dame. I looked before we hit live or go live here, down to 11.5. So there is steam on Navy. I hope it keeps coming down. I'm inclined to go heavy on Notre Dame. I think that's a good matchup for them. We got Oregon playing host to Illinois. Alabama favored by a pretty hefty margin against Mizzou. Penn State minus about a touchdown on the road against Wisconsin. By the way, it was just announced that the Penn State-Ohio State game is going to be a noon kickoff, which means that Oregon-Michigan will be a 3:30 when we're out there.
Oh, great. Good by me.
Pretty good time setup.
Love that.
And LSU against Texas A&M is sort of like the big matchup in the SEC. That game's in Kyle Field. It is at 7:30 on ABC. A&M is favored by 2.5 points. So those are the big games. There are some other ones of note: Nebraska, Ohio State, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, BYU, UCF, Texas Vandy. Who knows? Right
in Nashville,
Vandy?
right?
Yeah. We've got Michigan, Michigan State, SMU, Duke. Not bad. Cincinnati, Colorado. So maybe lacking for obvious Georgia versus Texas style headliners, but
that's okay.
Plenty of intrigue here. There are a bunch of games on this docket that I'm pretty excited about.
By the way, did you see that the SEC ruled on the bottle throwing for Texas? They got fined, I think, $250K, and they have to use all available technologies to identify and ban any of the bottle throwers.
I saw that. I saw one of the Barstool accounts was tweeting out a screen grab of a text message that was reportedly going around to students. I haven't seen that actually confirmed anywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be something.
And
I don't
to
know.
students announcing that they're banned from Texas events the rest of the year.
Yeah, that they're pulling their tickets. I don't know if it's legit, but if they're using all available technology, all of these stadiums have high-powered cameras where they can look for people.
By the way, the ultimate losing effort is everybody who threw bottles. It was a winning effort for that play. I don't know if the SEC commented on the horrible play or the horrible call that brought out the throwing, but all those Texas throwers getting banned for the rest of the year as they watch their team lose the biggest game of the season for them.
You miss games at home against Florida and Kentucky.
Okay, that would have been a fun night.
A&M is on the road this year, Kyle Field.
Yeah.
So those are the big games. Again, we're going to do our Thursday preview a little bit later on this week. We would encourage you to stop on by, hit follow, hit subscribe if you are ever so inclined. Tell your friends, leave a rating or review if you've been here a while. All this stuff helps us grow the Verballerhood. It has been a very successful season for us. A lot of new people have found the show, so we appreciate having you here. Always fun to grow our little, I keep calling it pirate ship. I think that's a good way
I
to
like
put
that.
it.
That's
You
great.
like that?
Yeah.
You cool with that? So look, final bit here. Our guy Shay put together an extended cut of the reverbs because we had so much going on when we did our last episode on Saturday night. Also, kudos to Shay for cutting reverbs on his 10th wedding anniversary. Okay. This is a separate conversation, but he put these together after the fact. I assured him he did not need to get these to us
Right.
ASAP because we would do them part of the Tuesday show. These aren't super long, but it is indicative of, I think, how fans were feeling here the rest of the way in week 8. So have a quick listen.
It's Jimmy from Ann Arbor, and I can't wait for tomorrow morning to see if Dusty May can get the Wolverines ready to make a run at the dance this year.
Dan, Ty, Travis from Perdido Key, Florida.
This is Patrick from Tybee Island.
Hello, this is Alex from East Lansing, Michigan. Get out your mustard packets, because it's the home dog of the week, baby. Go green, go safe.
Jonathan Kim, more like Jonathan Him. 6 field goals to beat Iowa at their own game. Go green.
So, wait, is Texas not back? Or is Vanderbilt better than Georgia? Or are both of those things true, or are neither of them true? I'm very confused.
Hey, S-Verb, this is Don in Maryland. This call is being overturned because my household members just threw a water bottle at me.
Anybody else throwing the beer on the field, or is that just me?
No, Carson, we're wearing the white shirts, not the white helmets. We've been over this, Carson. Go Dogs.
Bevo's tears taste like crappy, burnt, overdone Texas barbecue. Go Dogs. Sick 'em. Woof, woof, woof.
I just watched my Gators absolutely kick Kentucky's ass. It was glorious, period.
Just letting you know that this happens against your lock of the week, Dan. Arkansas Razorbacks. Go Tigers.
Hi, this is EJ and family checking in from Madison, Wisconsin after the latest edition of Rocktober. Go Birds!
This is Steve from Atlanta, Georgia, calling about 7-win Indiana. Smoke when we got them, boys. Coach Stig wins again.
So I write a newsletter called The Solid Slate, and at the beginning of the year, I made a bunch of predictions. One of them was that this is Miami's year. Other ones were that Oklahoma would do better than expected and that UCF would win the Big 12. Yeah, all those aren't panning out, but my Miami one's doing great.
Maine fan here. Could Maine really get their first shutout in 11 years against number 5 Villanova? No, Villanova scored with 2 minutes left to make it 35-7. One of the most surprising results of the year. Go Black Bears.
Nice.
California Golden Bears are like the little brother of the entire ACC. It's like when you're playing Smash Bros. With your little brother and you let him get you down to 20%, and then you come back and beat the ever-loving crap out of him. That's Cal. You'll see when I hit my growth spurt.
When will WVU end the Neil Brown era? Can we please stop watching this horrendous product and bring back home the prodigal West Virginia native and Jimbo Fisher
Of course.
as the next head coach?
Of course.
Wow. You just extended Neil Brown.
I wasn't a huge believer after last year, but I always appreciate improvement. But it's tough. It's a tough watch this year.
Thank you to everybody who dialed in at 855-VERBAL-3. As always, it's a pleasure to hear your messages. Yes, we got inundated this past week with calls, and Shay said there are too many on the cutting room floor. We need to do a whole other segment. So that does it for the spillover episode. Don't forget previews coming up on Thursday. We've got a lot of games to discuss. You heard just a small sampling of them. I'm excited about what this week has in store as we get into week 10. Don't forget, Dan, we're going to that Oregon-Michigan game.
Can't wait.
The aforementioned Oregon-Michigan. We're going to be there. So if you're going to be in Ann Arbor or some parts around Ann Arbor, give us a holler. Let us know. We'd love to meet up.
If you're tailgating.
If you're tailgating.
If you own a breakfast sandwich restaurant and want to give Ty the full spread, let us know.
solidverbal@gmail.com. Where's this dog at? Come here, dog.
Come here, dog.
See if I can put her on the screen since she's been.
Yeah. Is this the new one?
This is the new one, yeah. For those.
How many weeks old? How many months?
There she is. She's going to bite my microphone.
Fuzz. Look at her.
There she is.
I would
watching
say
the YouTube video.
Some would say the best dog of any college football personality around.
Oh boy, shots fired at Ben.
Some say
shots fired at Ben. Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't take her off leash and let her roam around campus. She would run away from me.
Yeah.
Especially right now. But for those watching the video, if you're wondering why have I been distracted and kind of all over the place, I've been chasing her around the room. So thank you for your patience. Try not to do this again.
All good.
In the meantime, for that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildebrand, thanks for downloading, for listening, for supporting the show. We will talk to you all on Thursday. In the meantime, stay solid.
Peace.